California Representative Mike Thompson was appointed by House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi to head up a gun legislation task force. He held 3 public forums back in California this past week to hear from constituents on all sides of the gun debate. And we'll show you that conversation, one of those conversations, from Santa Rosa, California. And we'll take your phone calls after the discussion.
And now I do have the pleasure of introducing Congressman Mike Thompson. Congressman Thompson was first elected to the United States Congress in 1998. Mike serves on the Subcommittee on Health and Subcommittee on Select Revenue Measures within the Committee on Ways and Means, as well as being the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Terrorism, Human Intelligence Analysis and Counterintelligence, and the Subcommittee on Oversight, all within the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman Thompson is a combat veteran. He was a Staff Sergeant Platoon Leader in Vietnam with the 173rd Airborne of the United States Army. He's also a Purple Heart recipient. Mike has a reputation for problem solving, for reaching across the aisle. He has been a great asset for the County of Sonoma, and we thank him very much. Mike is also a gun owner and an avid hunter, I understand. And I could think truly of no one who is better suited to serve as chair of the Congressional Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. Congressman, thank you very much for all your work, and welcome.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you all for coming out tonight. This is the 3rd town hall meeting on our effort to prevent gun violence. And input from the public is extremely important, so I'm honored that you took time to come out tonight and share your constructive ideas with how we can accomplish this. I just can't emphasize how important it is. And as everyone knows, emotions got extremely high. Motivation and constituent input to do something about gun violence hit an all-time peak after the terrible, terrible tragedy in Connecticut. There's no question that that's the worst gun tragedy that I've ever seen in my life, and I can understand why people and communities are upset and why they're concerned and why they want something done about it. But I also want to caution folks that there is no one bill that can be passed. There's not one magic wand that could be waved that can guarantee that we never have problems like that. And we can't move forward by judging our efforts on the last tragedy. And as bad as that was, gun violence is with us every day. We see it most often when it's a huge tragedy such as Connecticut. But the truth is, since that Connecticut tragedy, there's been over 800 people killed with firearms in our country. And the American people have said loud and clear they want something done about it. I've been appointed to chair a task force to try and do something about it. And as Chairman Rabbitt said, I'm a gun owner, I'm a veteran, a combat veteran, I'm a hunter, I understand guns, and I understand that the only way we can do it is if we all come together, we all are at the table, and everything's on the table. And that's the only way we're going to be able to forge a solution that works and make sure our communities are safer than they are today. So I'm looking forward to your constructive comments as to ideas you might have on how we can accomplish that. I want to, right up front, state clearly and succinctly, this is not a listening session or a hearing on the Second Amendment. That issue is not what we're talking about. The Second Amendment is guaranteed in the Constitution of the United States of America. And when the court ruled, when the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in the Heller decision, they took this away from the argument. No longer can folks on one side say we can own any gun we want, and no longer can folks on the other side say this only pertains to a militia. The court was real clear. U.S. citizens have a right to own firearms, period. Now, government entities have a right to pass regulation and laws pertaining to those firearms. But Americans have a right to own firearms. So please remember that, and I think if we do, that'll help us get through all of the speakers, giving everybody a time to talk. There's an old saying in Congress that everything's been said, but everybody hasn't yet said it. I don't think we have to do that. I think if you're not redundant, it'll give everybody a time to talk, and maybe we can get some good ideas out there in order to help forge a solution. Now, we're in pretty good shape tonight on our panel. We've got some real experts here. I'm going to ask each one of them to make some brief opening comments, and they're here to clarify any issues, and more important, like me, they're here to listen to any ideas that may come about. So first, I'll start with Mike Kennedy, Sonoma County Department of Health Services, Mental Health Division.
Okay, thank you. So the comments I would like to make focus on that we know that for mental health, people with individuals that have mental health either issues and also serious mental health issues. Our goal, and I think a lot of folks know that in California with the Mental Health Service Act, our goal has been really to intervene earlier, provide better access, and link people to treatment. And we believe that would help things in general. One of the things I wanted to talk about is we, through the Mental Health Service Act in this county, in the last couple of years have implemented one new program that I think is worth mentioning, and it's called our Crisis Assessment, Prevention, and Education Team, and it focuses on, it's a partnership with the community college, the Santa Rosa Junior College, and about 9 high schools, the 2 high schools out, Annalee and El Molino, and then all the city high schools. And we have a county team, a licensed staff, and a psychiatrist that are available and go to schools to do assessments. We actually sit on the crisis team at the community college so that we can talk together. Since we're part of their health center, we're able to exchange information, and we're actually able to directly then link students that have mental health issues directly to services. In the last year and a half, we've been able to hospitalize about 10 young people, get them stabilized, and then they're able to stay in school. We work also at the high schools. We work in tandem with some of Santa Rosa's resource officers, with the assistant principals, and we're available to go out, do assessments. The second part of it, though, is what we found is a lot of teachers, family members were saying to us, you know, we saw some issues, we just didn't really know what to do. So the other thing that this team provides to all those settings is something we call QPR, which is question, persuade, refer. It's an evidence-based model that teaches individuals the signs of mental illness, depression, suicide, and then what questions to ask, how to persuade somebody to get help, and then how to actually access help. And that would be to bring the team out there. It's been so successful at the schools that Annalee and at several of the other schools now, we're training incoming freshmen, the whole classes in QPR, plus the teachers. And so it really gives us the ability to do aggressive outreach and then target young people really between the ages of 16 and mid-20s that are having either first psychotic breaks or serious mental illness. So it's one of the programs that I think is extremely effective and could help in prevent some of these things.
Thank you. Next, Sheriff Freitas.
Good evening. First, I'd like to thank Congressman Thompson for inviting me to be on this panel. I'd also like to thank all of you for taking the time to come out and give us your thoughts. I'm appreciative to see this large crowd and that people would take their time out of their schedule to come and talk to us. I am primarily interested in listening to what people's ideas are, whether they be here or at the locally or at the state level. One thing from an enforcement standpoint that I'd just like to mention that maybe we could accomplish through this process would be Many of us in law enforcement, and I talked to many of my colleague chiefs of police here in Sonoma County today, we feel that the gun laws are, quite frankly, confusing, many of them. We think it's hard to enforce the laws from the street level enforcement aspect because the laws are hard to interpret and understand. And if it's hard for us, then it must be hard for the public. So we'd like to see the laws simplified to some extent and then enforced. And other than that, I'll be happy to listen to what people have to say tonight. Thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Next, District Attorney Jill Ravitch.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here tonight, and it's particularly a pleasure because the subject is gun violence prevention. Unfortunately, my experience is in the aftermath of gun violence. My job is all about dealing with what happens after the carnage, dealing with victims, trying to figure out the proper way of dealing with the offenders, and I would really like to lose that opportunity through prevention. I'm excited to hear what Mike Kennedy is doing with mental health here. I think that one of the results of that tragedy in Connecticut was it got us talking about mental illness and what we can do better as a community to deal with mental illness problems and integrate those individuals into our community and provide services. So like the sheriff and the others here, I'm here to listen. I'm here to look for better solutions. And ultimately, I'm here to find better ways to prevent gun violence. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Steve Harrington, Superintendent at Sonoma County Schools.
Thank you. I'm also here on behalf of the professional teaching community. And before I make my opening comments, on behalf of the teachers in Sonoma County, we wish to honor and express our respect for the students, teachers, administrators, and psychologists who lost their lives at Sandy Hook Elementary School on December the 14th, 2012. We remember these young children who died too soon. We take our role to educate the students in Sonoma County schools seriously, and I know that all school employees are especially attuned to this issue of school safety and student well-being following this horrific incident. The educators who sacrificed their lives at Sandy Hook did so because they were committed to creating a better world through teaching. Let us keep their memories alive through their own and our own dedicated work in Sonoma County schools. Our students are the hope and the promise for the future. As the county superintendent, I wish to reassure you that every one of our schools within Sonoma County have current and on-file school safety plans. Many of our schools have cooperative policing agreements for school resource officers at the secondary level, 9 through 12. Every K-8 school conducts safety drills once a month. Every high school conducts a quarterly drill each year. Of those drills, 2 must be at least lockdown and 2 must be earthquake. As resources are available to schools, we are required to retrofit and redesign our campuses through the post-Columbine design requirements that came out of that terrible incident. The teaching professionals and administrators and school classified employees who work diligently with the school boards and community wish to provide safe campuses for every child. But we are also aware that we can increase the safety by reducing the risks, and that's why I'm here tonight, to listen to the ways we can reduce the risks to our children and to our teachers. Most of our campuses are not designed as well as the school at Sandy Hook. That was a self-contained school that did not have the open patio effect that California schools do. So we have a more difficult situation in securing our schools for lockdown. But one of the good things about our community is that under Proposition 63, which you passed a few years ago, we were able to initiate a pilot program for the mental health that was just expressed to you. So I think it's in our community's interest to know what we're doing, and I hope more of these results will be shared with the total community. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And then next is Special Agent Blake Graham with the State Department of Justice, who probably should get a pin for being here for 3 of these in a row.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'm here to talk about 2 different programs that the California Department of Justice is involved in regarding firearms. The first of which is I'll talk about our background checks. The Department of Justice, specifically the Bureau of Firearms, conducts the background checks for the state. We query many different databases, restraining order systems, warrants, criminal history, mental health system. We check for convictions in-state, out-of-state, and various other federal systems as well. Last year, 2 years ago, 2011 now, we did 601,000 background checks. In 2012, we did 812,000. So far this year, as of yesterday, we did about 27,000 already. So there's been a big spike lately in the number of background checks. The other side of that is the people that are denied consistently, it's about 1.1% of those that apply to buy a gun. And that's held out over many years. Those people that purchase guns lawfully sometimes become prohibited later. That leads to the second program I'm going to talk about real briefly. It's called the Armed Prohibited Person System. Those people that, again, at one point purchased a gun, they can at some point become prohibited through a mistake of their own, legally, maybe a mental health issue, things like that. Currently, there are about 18,000, 19,000 people, depending on the day, it fluctuates, that are in our system, this armed prohibited person system, that have a prohibition of some kind, and they have about 38,000, 39,000 weapons associated to them statewide. We have teams out just about every day of the week. There are only 33 agents in the state that attempt to contact these people. So we're small, but we're doing what we can. There are teams out tonight in different parts of the state. I think that's probably all I have.
And the 39,000 guns that are in the possession of people who are prohibited from owning guns, those are only handguns and assault weapons, correct?
Correct. Yeah, those are the weapons that we're allowed to track, are handguns and registered assault weapons.
So the reality is that there could be a lot more than that. They
Correct.
could have long guns.
Generally when we seize weapons, we'll seize a few of the ones that we know about, and then others that are generally rifles and shotguns that are not in our systems currently.
Thank you. As you can tell by the panel, this is a very, very complex issue, gun violence prevention, and it crosses many disciplines. It deals with mental health, it deals with education, it deals with background checks, it deals with the guns and the accessories themselves, as well as a culture of violence that is also very, very difficult to deal with. I think the Second Amendment stuff is tough. Try the First. And so we've got a lot of work cut out for us. So if you've got ideas, we want to hear from them. And how are we doing this, Jim?
Thank you, Congressman. Folks who would wanted to speak, fill out a speaker card and hand them to the staff at the front. And then everyone will have a minute and a half. And if you look to your left, there is a traffic signal there. Green means you have plenty of time. Yellow means you have 30 seconds. And at red, your time is up and it will beep. We will try to remind you when you're done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you're going to call 5 at a time, Cheryl?
I am. I'm going to call 5 at a time, and before the fifth speaker speaks, I'll call the other 5 up so that we don't have any breaks. Are we ready to go, Congressman?
We're ready.
So would the first 5 please come up, please? Supervisors Shirley Zane, Madeline Mello, and Ian Cheney, Ted Heinrich, Dave Adams, and Susan Spear.
I would like to be entered in that, but I cannot give you my name. I have to stay anonymous because of security reasons. I'm an ex-military officer. I'm a retired military physician. I also was in Joint Task Force 6.
Okay, let the speakers speak, please.
Pardon?
Let the speakers speak, please.
Right, but how do I get in on the list there? Because I cannot give you my name.
Why don't you fill out a yellow card and just put anonymous, and maybe then they could call you up.
I'm recognizing my own family as well as myself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Shirley.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you, Congressman Thompson, for being here, and I'm really glad that you've been appointed to this important committee. As tragic as gun homicide is, particularly when it involves our precious children, I want to make sure that the relationship between guns, gun ownership, suicide, and veteran suicide is part of the dialogue here tonight. I want to share some sobering statistics with you. Suicide is the leading cause of firearm death. In 2009, the U.S. firearm suicide total was over 18,000, an 11% increase from 2006, as compared to half that number of homicides. Although most gun owners reportedly keep a firearm in their home for protection or self-defense, 83% of gun-related deaths in gun owner homes are the result of a suicide, often by somebody other than the gun owner. Homes with guns are 5 times more likely to experience the suicide of a household member than homes without guns, 5 times. Death by firearm is the fastest growing method of suicide. And unlike suicide attempts using other methods, 92% of suicide attempts with a gun are fatal, meaning a temporarily depressed person who uses a gun will never get a second chance of life. Individuals are 9 times more likely to die by suicide if a loaded gun is in their house than there is no gun. Congressman Thompson, I know that you're a veteran, and I know veterans' issues are near and dear to your heart as they are to mine. And I brought up a photo of my dad, who was a Marine Corps World War II veteran, Distinguished Flying Cross. And I just want to share a couple of facts and then ask you for what I would like you to address here tonight. 20% of U.S. deaths from suicide are veterans, yet veterans make up only 10% of the population. Veterans are more likely than the general population to use firearms as a means of suicide. And among male veterans, 84% of completed suicides involved firearms. I'm going to give my conclusions. I'll finish within 1 minute, I promise. All right.
Shh. Okay. Quiet down. You can give me your clothes later.
Thank you, and I thank you for being here tonight. Thanks.
Shh.
Hello, Mike. I'm Madeline Mello, and this is Ian Cheney, and I know you know me. Ian was with Jerry the day that he was murdered. So I won't be able to tell you the whole story, I guess, but I'll start. First of all, thank you for allowing me to speak today. You knew Jerry Mello very well. My husband, Jerry, excuse me, I always speak with emotion, was murdered on August 27th, 2011. This is the issue that you face today and our country faces. It is the very issue that I have struggled with every day since Jerry's murder. The Mendocino County DA's report showed that not only was Jerry's murderer known by the family to be mentally ill and a drug user, but also that the semi-automatic weapon he used to gun down Jerry was given to him by a family member. It is suspected that he was able to purchase the multiple round clips legally himself. Jerry worked for a local timber company. He was accompanied by a neighbor to verify a report that there was a trespass grow on that property. That neighbor is Ian Cheney. Jerry was unarmed, but Ian carried a gun that day, not an automatic weapon, but a handgun, a gun he had to use. In firing that handgun, he was able to surprise the killer and gain just enough time to escape with the killer chasing and shooting at him. If he did not have that gun, Ian would not be standing here with me tonight. And he would have left behind a beautiful little girl and a loving wife. I strongly support our right to own and use guns. However, the unchecked acts of violent criminals take away the rights of others to live a safe and protected life. What to do now? You will hear 1,000 solutions. But I say, enforce the laws we have. Every law enforcement agency I have talked to sing the same song: budget cuts, lack of trained personnel, lack of a will to prosecute. Gun owners have a responsibility to keep those guns out of the hands of the mentally ill, drug users, and convicted criminals. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Whoops. Hello, my name is Ted Heinrich, and I have to say that's a very difficult speech to follow. I'm not unfamiliar with guns. As a cadet, I was on an award-winning rifle team in Chicago, Illinois. So it's not out of some sort of fear that I speak on this tonight. But I am appalled at the reckless distribution of firearms in this country and the tragic destruction of lives and families that this is causing. While we have laws on the books to control sales, for example, they are so shot through with holes and exceptions that they're meaningless for their purpose. For example, if it makes sense to do background checks on gun buyers in a store sale, why is it not equally sensible to do background checks for internet sales or sales at a gun show? We need to license cars and drivers because the equipment and its use poses a danger to the public if misused. And we need to apply these same reasonings to gun control. I hope ultimately that, whoops, am I out?
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Just a point of clarification while we're waiting for the next speaker. We do in California, but in other states we don't. And this is a national issue, so all these things need to be taken into consideration. Next speaker, please.
Good evening. My name is Susan Spire, and I'm a resident of Sonoma County. And I don't have anything profound to say. I just would like to thank you for taking the time. This is a very, very complex issue, and one that is deeply felt, I'm sure, by everybody in the room. I'm just hoping that within time, we can find a way to really curtail a lot of what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we have James Johnson, Mike Malone, John Logan, Michael Jagardi, and Margaret Fishman, please?
I'm James Johnson. I'm a retired school psychologist here in Sonoma County. I've been a credentialed school psychologist for over 40 years. There needs to be early intervention, very early intervention at kindergarten, first grade level. There needs to be clear and available help for all students at early ages. Early intervention is a key. So your mental health programs are key to get to students early. We have a situation where many students are identified early on, and there is no way for parents to access services unless it's either mandated by a juvenile court or they volunteer. I have several parents called me, not only in my private practice, but also publicly, that their kids, by the time they reach 13, 12, are out of control. So early intervention is a key to this issue, and it must be engineered carefully and completely all over the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Mike Malone. I'm a geologist. I spend a significant amount of my work time on the North Coast, increasingly populated by drug cartels, pit bulls, and the occasional cougar. So personal defense is important to me. Congressman Thompson, your committee has waded into some very deep water here. I think your actions and policies could save lives, or they could have some very serious unintended consequences. It's obvious to me that there are those who oppose the Second Amendment, and I'm certainly not implying that to you. But there are those who do that, and they use political subterfuge to slowly undo this fundamental right by means of agencies, bureaucracies, and obscure regulations that neuter this right without having to answer to the American people. California, for example, and I realize this is a federal thing we're talking about here, but California, for example, has created a twisted maze of firearm regulations, leaving the honest citizen who uses or even carries a firearm responsibly, including for the purpose of legitimate personal safety and self-defense, in constant jeopardy of being criminalized. Our legislature's response, there's now a proposal to double down on failure and fingerprint people that buy ammunition. Congressman Thompson, I hope to hear from you this evening a promise as one of our representatives in Congress that you and your committee will recommend that all proposed federal firearm regulations will be openly debated and voted on in Congress and not imposed on Americans by executive order. I would expect that the President, if the President runs the democratic process that is our Congress, that you and your committee members would protest loud and clear and assert Congress's authority over the President in these serious constitutional matters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The more clapping and stuff that goes on, the longer it's going to take to get through the speakers, and we're only going to be here till 9:15. So I would suggest that we don't show that effort. And I just want to point out on the what the administration can do by executive order. I heard it for the first time yesterday when the rest of you heard that, and that was my first question. Exactly what can the President do? And as I understand it, this is what he can do by executive order. He can appoint an ATF director, something that hasn't been in place and needs to be in place. He can prosecute prohibited purchasers who attempt to buy guns, or he can't, but he can see to it that it's done. Tell local law enforcement when a prohibited buyer tries to buy a gun and is denied. Require federal agencies to report records to the instant background check NICS service. And he can remove the remaining THART restrictions from the FY14 budget that restricts money to be used to trace crime data, something that even the original author of that effort said was foolish, and he wished he could go back and undo it. And that's it.
My name is John Logan. I'm a 100% disabled retired Vietnam veteran, and like you, sir, I was combat wounded. I am the ungrateful recipient of 2 AK rounds. I see no practical purpose whatsoever to owning assault weapons except to destroy human life. At the same time, I am not in favor of gun control. If there are 200 million weapons in this country already, as I have
300.
read.
300.
All right. Then that's just about 1 per person, but yes, less than 50% of the people, I believe, own those weapons.
20%.
Okay. So you're going to have a hard time getting them back, right? And I know within 5 miles of here where I can pick up a Thompson machine gun, an AR-15, or an AK, right, without talking to anybody, even though they're illegal in this state, okay? My point is this, that is that one of the things that might be included in one of the bills, to be comprehensive, is to have a generous buyback program, especially in these economic times, that a lot of people might want to turn some of these weapons in. They may own 3, you might get 1. But the point is you get rid of some of them. I don't care if you ban assault weapons. I don't need an assault weapon to protect my home. If it takes me more than 5 rounds to do away with an intruder, I should either be dead or I will be, right? But all of this stuff, whether you decrease the number of rounds a magazine can hold, decrease the potency of the ammunition, I believe if you don't have a comprehensive mental health program, you've done nothing.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Michael Gilardi, and I'll try to talk quick since I've only got a short time, so if I go too quick, let me know. There's 80 million gun owners in this country. Last I heard, and I checked online several times. Most of them have families. Most of them have children in those families. So kids getting killed in a school is very high priority. But the alternative is, like Senator Feinstein's ban does nothing. Those weapons, if you eliminate weapons, only the criminals are going to have weapons. England's that way now. Their crime rate's jumping 89% per year, gun crimes, and nobody can own a gun in England. No, it is true. I looked, believe me.
What do they do with all those Purdy's that they sell over there?
Some of the upper rich
There are a lot
people
of
can
guns
still
in
go out
England.
and what they call birding, but yeah, they still a bunch of those Purdy shotguns around. Let's see, where do I want to go with this? California right now, I mean, well, as far as like getting rid of gun violence, like everybody else keeps saying, the first thing you got to do is deal with the mind. John Steinbeck, who's a Nobel laureate and a hell of an author besides, has said years ago words to the effect that the mind is the weapon, everything else is merely supplemental. And that pretty much sums it up. Anybody who wants to kill somebody, they're going to find a way to kill them. And it's easier to make a bomb. And somebody's going to find out that that's a lot easier and kill a lot more people, like Timothy McVeigh did, who, by the way, he tried to get into special forces. They figured out he was mentally inept, and they cut him loose. And he went and blew up, the thing.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Before the next speaker, could we have Peter Alexander, Phil Graff, Hugh Fike Sr., Orlean Cole, or Coley, and Fred Rome, please.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Margaret Fishman. I'm a retired teacher from Montgomery High School. I'm a liberal Democrat. I'm a proponent of the Brady Bill, and I am a gun owner. There are limits to most of my constitutional rights, and the Second Amendment is no exception. I may not own a surface-to-air missile nor a functional tank. However, I would never want to ban all guns. My message is this: the time is now for reasonable federal legislation. While I have advocated continually on this issue, it appears that the public will and the political will are now intersecting. A perfect storm, if you will. The time is now for bans on assault weapons. We could get into a massive discussion on these weapons, but I'm referring to high-capacity removable clips. Universal background checks are needed, registration, and a nationwide buyback program. The time is now. I trust that the intent of this forum is more than show and tell, and that Vice President Biden's nationwide effort to hear the people will result in actual federal legislation without flaws that allow for skirting the issue or the law. I know from personal experience that the NRA does not speak for all gun owners. The NRA is mostly a lobbying organization and represents gun manufacturers and is mostly motivated by profit. The time is now. I am not so naive to think that the limits on guns will create a crime-free world. There are a host of additional areas to be addressed, such as mental health and educational issues. But I do think we can minimize killing, and the time is now. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Peter Alexander, Chernev. I wrote my notes down. Almighty C, Almighty B. May the Almighty Spirit be upon us all, and highest praise unto the living Lord. For as it's been given, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. And there will be no answer through the political or legal means. Mental illness be with those seeking to maintain the insane, resulting in homeless vets and children, never-ending wars, and the core of all war. The slaughterhouse murder of 14 million sentients today and the day after and the day after, maintaining Satanio's laughter. Come out of the religion's long-standing deception with the 40-day general strike for freedom, which be our royal reception. Let us shine a light on the common denominator, which to those familiar and comprehending be MK Ultra signatures with all these mass shootings is the connection. Also connecting to Dennis Kucinich's current effort assisting Gulf War vets from 92 to 2002, over 200,000 vets, deaths by vaccines, murdered by genocide, by vaccines designed by the likes of Dr. Maurice Wolin. And my knowledge be firsthand
for I have been privy to conversations with these people throughout the 80s. And I'm available to be talked to by Mike McGuire.
Thank you.
And one last sentence, and that is that Detective James Rothstein has often stated that certain people never get prosecuted because of their connections. I hope this is not the case. Thank you.
Next. Next. No, I don't. No, you haven't been called, sir. You need to go back and take a seat, and we'll call you when it's time. Okay.
Hi, my name's Hugh Fike Sr. I live in Petaluma.
Pull the mic over closer.
My name is Hugh Fike Sr. I live in Petaluma. Thanks for holding this forum. I'm glad to hear you mention the high-grade shotguns that the aristocracy uses in England. And I hope that it doesn't come to that in America, but it seems that that's what politicians are aiming for, that eventually rifles and pistols will be taken out of the citizens' hands and only birding guns will be left. I hope that at some point in the future you have maybe a forum on hospital violence, for example. Far more people are killed by medical accidents in America than by guns. I'm always fascinated that the First Amendment is interpreted so liberally as to include a jar of urine with a crucifix in it, and yet the Second Amendment is interpreted so strictly that the rights of the people shall not be infringed, somehow doesn't apply in many cases. Although I'm glad to hear you say that guns are protected by the Second Amendment. So what it seems to be happening is that politicians are going after ammunition. They want to increase the cost of ammunition to the point where it's unusable. Thank you.
Airborne. My name is Phil Graff. I'm from Sebastopol. I'm a firearms instructor. I also work for the largest firearms training organization in the country, probably in the world. We train about 40,000 people per year. We have a standing offer that any administrator or any school teacher who would like to be trained can come to our program for 4 days. We guarantee we'll turn them out with more skill than 90% of police and 90% of military. I say that from experience. There is one common factor, and Mike, I've got a letter from you that you didn't get yet because it was just hot off the presses. If somebody would give it to you, from Dr. Ignatius Piazza, who is the founder and CEO of that company. The common factor we see in these sad instances, and more than sad instances, they're heart-rending, is psychotropic drugs. Virtually every one of these maniacs was either on drugs or coming off of drugs, leaving them in a homicidal, suicidal condition, and then it's a matter of what tools do they get their hands on. Would they be guns? Would it be bombs? What might it be? They'll do it. Who are the first responders? I hear people talking about the victims. I have a different category. There's victims and there's intended victims. Victims are people who have been disarmed and cannot defend themselves. Intended victims are people who have a fighting chance to fight back. There's a saying, dial 911 and die. Steve, your boys are the best there are. I know a lot of them. They're great people, but they can't get there much faster than about 60 miles per hour. If I'm there dialing 911, I'd rather have my bullet getting there at 940 to 1,200 feet per second.
Thank you. Thank you. Where did you get the information on the drugs?
It's something that we've researched at Frontside. I don't personally have it. I think there's some other speakers here tonight that
well, the reason I ask is because in all three forums now, this has been brought up and almost verbatim, and I have a handout that I've been given in the last two. And we tried to run that out, and we can't find any information on that. And so I'm not sure how some folks can randomly get that, and yet we can't. So
well, you've issued an interesting
if you can figure
challenge.
out what the source is, please let me know.
I guarantee we will research that, and you'll get a copy of the research.
Thank you.
I'd like one, since there's
no time. I let your time run before I asked my question. That was on my time.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Fred Rome. I'd like to address the definition of an assault rifle. Since they're talking about a ban on assault rifles, it's my understanding that a true assault rifle is a rifle capable of fully automatic fire. Such a rifle is not available to the average person. It requires a background check, it requires special permission, and there are some, and they are mostly just owned by military and not available to the public. There are some rifles that have a silhouette that looks like those same military rifles, but they are in no way the same. And I'd like to see a reasonable definition, and not because it looks scary or it has a thumbhole stock or some physical feature, but an actual operational feature. And correct me if I'm wrong in my assumption, but that's what I came to understand, that for the most part, the bill of 1986 banned the manufacture of fully automatic weapons for public use.
I think we're in California, so there's a legal definition in California of an assault weapon. And the weapons that you're talking about that require the tax stamp and the special permit, those are fully automatic weapons. And you're correct, there are very few of those. They don't make any more of those. In order to get them, you have to go through a number of hoops to get it. But that's the difference is one semi-automatic, the other is fully automatic.
Yes, but my feeling is the semi-automatic is not an assault rifle.
No, I say the assault weapons that are banned in California, there's a definition of those, and DOJ can talk about it. It's a rifle that can take a detachable magazine and has one of the following characteristic: barrel shroud, flash suppressor, I don't know, pistol grip. But it's defined in law, but it is semi-automatic. The other weapons you're talking about are fully automatic, and that does fall under the National Firearms Act. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
Before our next speaker, could we please have Griffin Dix, Joan Davis, Russell Clore, Mark Nebeski, and Daryl Parrish. Paris.
I'd first of all like to thank Congressman Mike Thompson for holding this hearing. I think this is such an important subject. My name is Orlene Kurla, and I am the state president of Eagle Forum of California. Eagle Forum has always been an organization that stands for protection of property rights as well as protection of personhood. And I'd like to remind you how important it is to learn from history. My husband was born in Mannheim, Germany during the Second World War. His father was from Switzerland, and I would like to let you know the difference between the philosophy of guns from Germany and Switzerland. Hitler, before he took over Germany, had first made sure that all guns were registered, and he told them they had to be registered because the crime rate was so high. Well, once all the guns were registered, he knew exactly where to go to take guns away from people, and that's what happened next. Switzerland, on the other hand, every family has to have a gun. In fact, it is given to them by the government, and every adult in the family is trained in how to use that weapon. Hitler took over every surrounding country of Germany except for Switzerland because the other countries had also been disarmed. He knew he could not do this to Switzerland. Switzerland today has the lowest crime rate of the entire world. They still have this same policy, and I am hoping that we can learn from history.
Thank you. Next speaker, please. Yeah.
My name is Russell Clore. I'm 65 years old, California native, brought up by my father to respect firearms from the time I was 8 years old. He was a World War II veteran, German theater, European theater rather. I remember him saying to me, I want to be sure that you're safe around firearms. I think education is a real critical issue in this. I find it hypocritical when fear and hysteria take over people that I would categorize as the anti-gun lobby or faction, because ignorance does not eliminate the problem or change the facts. National Rifle Association has a program to educate young people about how to be safe around firearms. As my father said, one day you will come in contact with a firearm. I want to make sure that you don't hurt yourself or anybody else with it. We enjoyed shooting sports all our lives, still do. I also want to comment on the fact that I think the issue of assault weapons that was raised by the gentleman a few speakers ago was very key. I think there's a lot of fear and hysteria just with the terminology assault weapon. Congressman Thompson, you just stated that there is a legal definition for that here in California. However, it's a very, very loaded term, and it implies it just really implies that there is a human action involved in an inanimate object. And I just don't think that's possible. I see, did my time run out already? I'm very sorry. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I believe the lady, when she called me up, she said Joan Davis. It's John Davis. I'm from Santa Rosa. But couple items. One, if I may, on assault weapons, one thing we should keep in mind is it accomplishes nothing. If I want to kill a bunch of people, I don't have to get an assault weapon. I can go down and get a semi-automatic rifle. Browning makes them, Ruger makes them, on and on. So I'll leave it at that. But it really doesn't accomplish anything. It makes somebody feel good, I guess, that they passed a bill and they can say they did something, but it accomplishes nothing. The second item I'd like to bring out is this whole idea of making schools gun-free zones. All that says to the criminals, come and shoot me. There's no concealed carry people here. We don't have any weapons. Just come right on in. So as soon as you put up the gun-free zone, you give an invitation to the bad guys to do the wrong things, obviously. I believe that LaPierre in our area is right. The only thing that's going to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And one of the things that... And one other quick point that I believe Congressman Thompson is trying to make you senator, sir. Congressman Thompson is familiar with is the armed security services we have at a lot of our schools in California. I was really surprised. Oakland, San Francisco, Riverside, San Jose, a lot of the school districts already have armed people on site. The LA School District has a police department, and that has worked out very well.
Thank you.
And actually, the one in Reading, you're probably familiar with, has worked out very well, too.
Thank you.
And my time's up. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Steve Gerard from Petaluma. 2 points I'd like to bring up, thank you for having this forum, by the way, that I'd like to enter into the national discussion more about the issue of psychotropic drugs being a commonality amongst these shooters. And I would like your committee to please consider evaluating how these are being handed to these to more individuals throughout this country without any regard for, I think, the negative side effects. Another issue that I would like to address is that those that possess firearms, there is a Gannett newspaper in New York that has now gained access to the addresses of legal possessors of firearms and posted those on a newspaper. And I believe that they have gained this access through a Freedom of Information Act that I am deeply concerned with, that law-abiding citizens can have their private information posted on a newspaper and send out this information to would-be wrongdoers and informing them of who and who is not in possession of firearms. And so thank you very much for your time.
My name is Dave Salon. I'm a retired police officer. I live in Petaluma and also a former member of the Mental Health Board of Sonoma County. And I do I've always followed shootings, as Mike knows. My only thrust really is we need far more intervention in mental health. Instead of the first thing cut in state budgets, county budgets, which is mental health, it needs to be doubled, tripled. We need a lot more intervention early on, like someone else said, very early on, and not be afraid. I'm sorry, everybody's afraid of labeling, but I'm sorry, when you have a disturbed child, I mean, I've watched my kids go through school and go, my God, look at this kid. When they do drawings and stuff, it's amazing. We need early intervention, and we need a lot more money into mental health. And I won't even go into the drug aspect, but mental health definitely needs more money.
Thank you.
I want to thank all the panel for being here and holding this meeting. My name is Gary Lucas. I have an idea that will show results faster and less expensive than any other thing I've heard yet. Remove the reward of immortality from shooters. Never mention their name, agenda again. Every time you get somebody killing 10 people, somebody wants to kill 20 people. Exactly. Get the media to quit naming the names, the agenda, the family, the high school. If people knew that they would be wiped from history, I don't think you'd have as many killings. That's about all I have to say. This is a very intelligent man, Gary Lucas.
There's a 1,000,000 to 1 shot. Guy with my name I've never met before. My name's Gary Lucas. All this boils down to one thing, 2 words: personal responsibility. You have personal responsibility for your kids. You can tell that your kid is going bad or having some kind of problem. It's your personal responsibility to take care of those kids. It's personal responsibility for the media to correctly report things, I agree with Gary Lucas, but they are to blame. They create these mindless video games that I wouldn't allow my kids to play, but they would sneak over to other kids' house and play them, that glorify violence, they glorify death. It's just absolutely mindless. That's the personal responsibility for them. For the legislative end of things, personal responsibility means budgeting more for mental health. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Before this speaker, could we please have Neil Fishman, Ken Cavoli, Arthur Warmoth, Kara Valuntin, and Marge Sorby.
Good evening, panel. Congressman Thompson, I saw in the newspaper you were saying how your experience in Vietnam, you know weapons well enough to say that assault weapons don't belong in the streets. But I think we should just remind ourselves that you were in Vietnam on the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. Given that that was false, I don't think that it was staged. I don't think that puts you in the position to say where assault weapons are appropriate and where they're not. I really wonder if there will be a time when this many people come out to address all the other children hurt by violence enacted by our own government, such as victims of drone strikes, particularly children, and also all the citizens in Mexico who've been harmed by things like Fast and Furious. And on, exactly how many people died. And on the issue of mental health services, I don't think that we should be looking for prescription drugs to be a solution. I mean, there was 28,000 drug overdoses last year. Most of them were prescription drugs, even if those weren't the kind that people say mass shooters take. And you were saying that these mass shooters aren't drugged. Well, one of the Columbine shooters was definitely drugged, and the other one, they haven't released his medical records. So we can't necessarily say if that had any effect, but on the other, it definitely did.
Thank you.
Congressman and members of the panel, my name is Neil Fishman. I'm a resident of Petaluma. I am a gun owner, a lifelong resident of Sonoma County. And I was going to tell a long story, but it took 2.5 minutes, so I'll try to shorten it. And when I grew up, there was a great story of a man I knew and his family. They were attacked in the middle of the night by a mob. He had a shotgun, kept the mob off for about 2 hours, and then they came in with tear gas that was provided by the authorities here in Sonoma County. And they brought him out of his house and tarred and feathered him because he was an organizer, a labor organizer, a communist, and a Jew. So I do understand the Second Amendment issues here, and I don't think they're left or right issues. But I do think that assault weapons, and I understand the difference in assault weapons. We're not talking about fully automatic guns. We're talking about guns with high-capacity clips, high-capacity magazines. We need to keep those out of the hands of crazy people. And I'm sorry, a lot of you people aren't going to like what I'm going to suggest, but that is, I think there should be a buyback program for semi-automatics that have removable clips. I think that we should ban the manufacture of these guns and the possession. But anybody who wants to own one should go through a background check, and if you are a long-time owner, that should be done by the local police, local sheriff, maybe even a gun club. So we don't want to put a...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Arthur Warmoth. I live in Roanoke Park. I'm interested in this issue because I'm a member of the Commission on Human Rights, and I'm also a professor emeritus of psychology at Sonoma State, but I'm speaking for myself and not for either of those organizations. I appreciated your emphasis, Congressman Thompson, on the fact that we're dealing with gun regulation, not the question of gun ownership. There's no question that the Second Amendment protects gun ownership. But I think the questions of regulation are very complicated and difficult to wrestle with. But I think one of the things that I'd like to comment briefly on is the psychological and cultural complexity of the issue. Because I think it's pretty clear that gun ownership is a deeply psychological issue related to the identity and imagination of both gun owners and anti-gun pacifists. So I think a lot of the work that needs to be done in this area is really going to be heavy lifting at the local level that will have to do with all of the areas that have been mentioned, education, mental health, enforcement, public communication, media, etc. So I would like to suggest the value of framing the federal policy as one which will support the efforts of the heavy lifting that is going to need to be done at the local level in order to get a handle on this problem. And this includes allocating resources, but also lots of other things. Thank you. And I have an expanded version of my comments that I'll pass along. Thank you.
If you don't have enough time to get your remarks, if you have any written remarks or material you want to pass in, you can do that, and I'll be sure to read it.
Hello, my name
Hold
is
the
Ken.
microphone close.
My name is Ken Cavalli. I'm from Sonoma, 60-year resident, a soldier, and a concerned taxpayer in regards to your legislation. The term, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help," scares the hell out of me. You folks are the problem. You're not the solution. You run on emotion, and you help foster the emotion among the crowd. Education. People are complaining about assault rifles. If you look on the state regulations for assault rifles, I got burned on it personally. I talked to one of the sheriffs, and he said, basically, I said, what is an assault rifle? If my 14-year-old son says, wow, it's probably an assault rifle. Okay? You're hurting innocent people. The system now has a system within it where you're guilty until proven innocent. When you contact the sheriff's department and ask for your weapons back, you're told, not your personal property. It's a gun, not your property. Mr. Sheriff, have you called the sheriff's office recently? You know, do you dial 1 for English? You know, how long it takes to get through sometimes? I've done it a few times. It's a real drag, especially if you've got an emergency. I worked with emergency services in the Valley for 26 years.
Thank you.
Part of the problem, not the solution.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm not sure if you called me. Did you call Carol Velutini? Yes. Okay, thank you. My name's Carol Velutini, and I'm a retired school teacher, and I grew up on Mount Jackson, and I grew up in a time where all the city cousins would come up and go deer hunting, so I'm familiar with guns. I don't do well with them. When I shot one, it was very loud, it banged into my shoulder, and I never used it again. But I believe in responsibility. I'm so happy that in this county we have a good educational program in the schools to try to prevent violence. But it doesn't go far enough. We have a severe lack of funds for mental health, and I know parents that talk to me in tears. They've tried to do something and their hands are held, and so we need more money in education, responsibility, gun safety. And as you know, I took it into my own hands because I had illegal people on my property, and we got our own guns. I didn't have my guns, but my friends had my guns, and we went up and we solved the problem. So I'm for responsible gun ownership, but also education in our schools and at a kindergarten level, and have, you know, the kids shouldn't be afraid to tell on people when they've heard something. And so thank you very much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before our next speaker, could we have Ann Durham, Margaret Belding, Kathy Graham, Don Philbrick, and Patrick Matheny?
I'm not sure if you called my name either. I'm Barbara Vaughn, V-A-U-G-H-A-N. You may have mispronounced it. There's not another Barbara here in line.
No, I thought it was Marge Sorby that I called.
Is there a Marge here? No, I mean the last group. I'm part of the last group.
Yeah, that's the last.
Go ahead and speak, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay, we have no evidence at all that Adam Lanza was mentally ill. It's easy to diagnose him in retrospect because of the seriousness of his crime. But the reality is that he would not likely have been under the care of the best mental health system even available to him. What we do know about Adam Lanza is that he had Asperger's syndrome. Children with Asperger's typically have poor social skills and few or no friends. They are either ignored by their peers or, worse yet, taunted and bullied, day after day, year after year. A child subjected to this treatment winds up with very poor self-esteem and lots of anger, enough anger to take a gun to the school he attended. This was true of Adam Lanza. It was true of the two young men in Columbine. There are solutions to this. There are school districts who are doing a good job of dealing with bullying, and it needs to spread. If we can teach our children and learn ourselves how to accept those who are different, not just from skin color, language, or religious beliefs, but those who lack social skills or athletic skills, kids who are too fat, too thin, too tall, or too short, child who is retarded, someone who has a speech impediment or hearing loss, and so on, we may be able to go a long way to prevent some of these tragedies if we have programs in all schools to deal with bullying. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
When a person needs protection, it can be said that there are often only seconds to spare when the police are minutes away. It's also a fact that in areas where guns are the least restricted, the statistic of murder and violent crime has dropped significantly. To stop the violence in which guns are only one weapon of choice, it is absolutely necessary to find the true target or reason behind it. And the one thing among many possible reasons for this phenomenon of mass violence carried out by American youth in recent years, the one that stands out as a common denominator in all of these mass shootings has been the fact that every one of these perpetrators has been under psychiatric care and taking strong mind-altering psychiatric drugs, according to the newspaper mostly. Drugs which have been created by the pharmaceutical companies in recent years and which have been systematically pushed on our children and youth through our public school system and the healthcare system. It is these very drugs that are creating the monsters who are killing their parents, teachers, and roommates. So if we really want to stop these violent events by young people, it will be absolutely necessary to ban the prescription and distribution of these strong, mind-altering drugs. And as a society, we will not have drug-induced assassins killing innocent people. At the same time, we must strengthen those aspects of society that have statistically provided a positive reduction in violent crime, namely to allow law-abiding responsible citizens to carry weapons, concealed or not,
Thank you.
to protect against mass shootings and violence.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Listen, keep your comments till you come up to the podium. And let's be respectful for all the speakers. And the more you clap, the less time we're going to have.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. Violence has come very close to my family. My father, who was an engineer on the railroad, was operating a train going down the tracks, and a young man stood beside the tracks with his gun, shot for pleasure at the train, and hit my father. My brother was killed by a man who carried a gun everywhere. This man had killed 3 other people, was still on the streets carrying his gun. His gun always had hollow point bullets. This does not make me want to own a gun. This wants me to ask my legislatures to plead with them to stop the manufacture and have a complete ban on the manufacture of hollow point bullets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Which, by the way, Homeland Security just purchased 1.7 billion rounds of hollow point bullets. My name's Don Philbrick. I'm from Santa Rosa, and one of the first things I'd like to say is there's not a person in this room whose heart does not go out to all the victims of the recent shootings. And being a prior military person, I would have cherished the opportunity to get in front of any one of those children and take a bullet for them. I find Dianne Feinstein's bill offensive, illogical, and unconstitutional, especially when we're shipping guns into Mexico, which has killed over 50,000 people in the last 3 years. We're shipping guns to Syria and Libya, but yet you want to take guns away from law-abiding American citizens? Where's the logic in that? You won't find any because there isn't. Officers, one of the things that I haven't heard a whole lot of people say is officers rarely prevent crime. They investigate crime, which is one of the most important reasons why citizens need to be able to protect themselves. Through my research, I've found that about 70% of gun violence in this country is perpetrated by gangbangers and second offenders. So my solution is simple. You commit a gun felony in this country, you go to jail for life. Take the criminals off the streets, not the guns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Graham. As you can see, I'm for the NRA. I'm a recruiter for the NRA as well as the California Rifle and Pistol Association. One of the things that I can see as a parent and a grandparent is we need to look into educating our young children. Through the NRA and the CRPA, they have programs to teach children about gun safety, how to handle a weapon, how to use a weapon, when to use it and when not to use it. I think that's one of the things that we can strive to do throughout the nation, not just here in Sonoma County or in Mendocino County where I'm from. Children need to know how to protect themselves. I have 15 grandchildren. They all know how to use a weapon. They range from 6 to 21, 9 boys and 6 girls. Every one of them can shoot. The school programs, the Bay Area, Concord area, they have rifle teams, competitive rifle teams. I'd like to see this happen in more than just the Bay Area, throughout California and throughout the nation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before you speak, sir, could we have Mark Mueller, Peter Stadler, Joseph Jordan, Mark Schmid, and Ron Moorhead?
Good evening. My name is Patrick Mahaney. I have a question that I want to pose and get a show of hands from the audience, which I think will be instructive for these proceedings. The question is, who would support arming and training school staff to the point where you had adequate immediate protection in the case of a Sandy Hook massacre? So I want to give me a show of hands for those who would favor that. I'm a teacher, yes. And who would oppose that? Okay, so it's about 50-50, and there's a lot of fence sitters, it looks like. And I'd like to ask.
Direct your comments up here. Direct your comments up here.
I am.
Okay.
I asked for a show of hands. Was that not instructive?
Your little comment about the tent sitters was. So
no,
be respectful to everybody here.
Look, I got 30 seconds. I'll do what I want, okay? You work for me. I pay your salary.
I'll give you your $1.50 that you pay me back right now. But you're going to be in this hearing. We're going to be respectful to everybody here. We're here to listen to ideas to stem gun violence.
Good evening, and thank you so much for holding this forum this evening. My name is Mark Mueller, and I'm a resident here in Santa Rosa, and I've been a resident in California since 1975. It pains me, and many of us, that we even have to be here this evening. A name that from the past that some people in this room might remember, Charles Whitman, August 1st, 1966, Austin Towers shooting. Since then, we've been on a path in this nation of moral degradation and the lack of God, the lack of leadership at all levels right now, which is rather disappointing. The lack of any kind of moral compass, as well as the, what could I say, lack of, and it's going to get worse, medical care for our kids. One of the things that are very unfortunate about Newtown and Aurora and a lot of these other events is, as so many others have mentioned, gun-free zones don't seem to be a real winning concept. I think that security is, at some level, an extremely good idea. I think we have more gun laws now than we know what to do with. And you instructed us not to address the Second Amendment, but that one phrase in there, to infringe, seems to be happening quite a lot lately. I have a lot of friends here in town that have businesses that revolve around the Second Amendment.
Thank you.
And in this economy, I don't think we need to close any more businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Joseph Jordan. I'm a police officer here in the state of California. Thank you for coming out. You're one of the few congressmen who has taken the initiative to do this, so thank you. First of all, you called Sandy Hook a gun tragedy. It was not. It was a human tragedy. It had nothing to do with guns other than the fact that he used them. I think it makes us all upset. We wish we could have stopped it. We can't. You asked for solutions, so I'm not going to stand up here and lecture too much about my opinion on assault weapon bans or magazine limits or whatever. I will, however, say I carry an AR-15 in my car every day. I carry high-capacity magazines every day. I carry them on and off duty every day, obviously not tonight. However, I find it deplorable that my wife may not be able to when I'm gone. She can't protect herself. Oh, she doesn't need it, but I do, and you do, with the deputy here, the sheriff right there, and everybody else in here should have the ability to protect themselves if needed. The solution, and I'm sorry to point it to the mental health because he's getting hammered over there, but I know you guys are doing the best that you possibly can with what you have. They need more. I can't tell you how many people I've 5150'd and I see them an hour later or 2 hours later walking around, and I think to myself, I hope I don't see them with a gun, because there's going to be one solution to that. That needs to be fixed. They're doing all they can, but they need more. The other thing is parents need to start taking responsibility and raising their children so that I don't have to. So,
my name is Peter Stadler. I'm a current veteran, soldier in the U.S. Army. I completely agree with the personal responsibility comments and mental health comments as well. As he said, you're getting hammered tonight, but the fact of the matter is, you know, no amount of background checks, of limitations and restrictions are going to stop somebody who wants to hurt somebody else. I was stationed at Fort Hood while Major Hassan shot it up. I had friends in that unit, and case in point with him, with Bradley Manning, who went through some of the strictest scrutiny. People are still going to change their minds. They're going to do what they're going to do. And no amount of restrictions, of limitations on responsible citizens like myself and others is going to change that. I find it frankly ridiculous that I can be trusted to carry an actual assault weapon overseas in a foreign country amongst children from other countries, and I can be trusted then to not create some type of international incident, and this is one we're getting grenaded, bombed, mortared, shot at every day. I find it ridiculous I can be trusted in that type of stressful situation to not open fire randomly, but I can't be trusted here among friends and family. Thank you.
Curtis Kendall, Jeffrey Van Den Brand, Ron Verall, Laura Barthouse, and Sharon Tremble, please.
Hello. Thank you for convening this forum. My name is Curtis Kendall. I live in Windsor. I'll put down my notes because they were a little too lengthy. I'm a gun owner, a hunter, and a former NRA member. I have very serious concerns about the inability to come up with a good definition for an assault weapon. Excuse me, an assault weapon. Several people this evening have pointed out how difficult coming up with a definition is. And I have a rather simple solution. Make semi-automatics illegal. Class them the same as a fully automatic weapon. I believe that for hunting purposes, you know, it's not that hard to work a bolt action or a lever action. A lot of people prefer to hunt with a single shot. And as far as magazine capacity, I see no reason for any more than 3 rounds. If you need more than 3 rounds when you're hunting, you need to spend some time at the range before going out. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Sharon Trimble, and I first want to start by saying many, many thank yous to Congressman Thompson. I think you're a very brave and courageous representative for taking on this issue. I've spent quite a bit of time over the last couple of weeks reading and talking about this on the internet, and the number of death threats against Senator Feinstein is really astonishing. These so-called law-abiding gun owners are making an awful lot of threats. We saw that on national TV last night with Alex Jones threatening civil war in America if he doesn't like the gun controls that President Obama and Vice President Biden come up with. And this is really upsetting to me that it is profoundly un-American and anti-patriotic to threaten violence and threaten civil war if they don't get their way. And those kinds of threats are everywhere, all over the discussions of gun control in this country. And it would, I would really like to see, if possible, one of your colleagues could speak out about this, that threatening violence if you don't get your way in the democratic process is not the American way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ron Verrill from Santa Rosa. I have a daughter, a sophomore at Anley High School. They're studying this very issue in their world history. One of the studies they're doing is on the largest assault on public school, where 44 people were killed when a school board member blew up the school. To me, this means the issue is of violence. We need to focus on the violence and what to do about it. In 2000, the New York Times did an analysis of 102 rampage killers. From that analysis, surprisingly, they were not drunk, they were not on drugs, they were not racist or satanics or video game fanatics. The analysis also showed that most of them had mental illness issues. Also, most of them were unemployed. A significant number of them threatened violence prior to the event. I hope that we can focus on solutions that address the mental health issue and our own economic issue that many of these events are started by. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before this speaker, please, could we have Dave Barry, Harry Johnson, Madeline Rose or Ross, Brenda Harris, and Doug Miller.
Thank you for hosting this. My name is Laura. I was born 9 months after my father returned from a war which defeated a world bully named Hitler, who was a staunch supporter of civilian gun control. Shortly thereafter, he went to Korea to fend off another bully who was also a gun control supporter. I'm very glad that my father is not alive today to see the lunacy we have made of the great legacy of freedom which he and other soldiers fought and died for. I was going to come tonight prepared with facts and rational arguments about gun control and provide suggestions for curbing violent crimes. But then I realized how pointless and absurd that would be, given there is no intent to curb violent crime, only to limit guns. Even this committee that you chair is focused on gun violence, which accounts for only 3% of the violent crime in America, and much of that includes law enforcement use and legitimate self-defense. What about the other 97% of violent crime? Where's the committee for that? No, instead our government uses the horrific deaths of innocent and beautiful children as a despicable ploy to further their own political agenda. The factless, baseless fear-mongering among the media and our elected officials has deeply divided this country and has driven us farther apart than at any other time since the original Civil War. I am deeply afraid that we are once again perched on that precipice, and with a president who threatens to pull rank and issue illegal executive orders contrary to the Constitution, the unthinkable becomes a real possibility. We fret about our children and grandchildren being bullied at school, yet what example do we give them? Our elected officials do nothing but draw lines in the sand and play games of dare and double dare with our economy, our health care, and our Constitution.
Hi, my name's Harry Johnson. I'd like to thank Mr. Thompson for holding this panel here in Santa Rosa. I don't have a Purple Heart, but I did serve in the Airborne and former Chief of Police, and I retired after 20 years with the Sonoma County Superior Court.
Those Purple Hearts aren't all that they're cracked up to be.
I probably ducked better. Basically, everything's been said that I had on my notes to say, and I have the same general consensus as a majority. With all due respect to the sheriff, with my law enforcement background, it's been said also that the police cannot protect you. They can only respond and take the report, and that's generally the process. The courts can't protect you with any order that they give. And after 20 years of with the courts are way too lenient to hold people responsible. Starts at juvenile age, goes through adults. We don't have the responsibility there. Rather than do any restriction on or further restriction on firearms, I think we'd best be served by providing the resources toward the mental health people and identifying and taking care of those issues first.
Thank you.
I'm a little bit nervous, so bear with me. My name is Brenda Harris, and I'm a Sonoma County resident. I just have a couple of comments. For one thing, I wondered why avid gun collectors need to have bullets to go with them or to shoot them. Also, I don't know if I'm mistaken or not, but I believe Dianne Feinstein's bill that she wants to, that she was going to submit allows for grandfathered in, and I think that should be eliminated totally, all assault weapons, period. I also feel that animals need a fair chance, and they don't need to have the helicopters with scopes and high-powered rifles killing. And also, like the gentleman said, only, what is it, 3 bullets or 3, I don't know if it's the rounds or whatever you call it, but anyway, because we used to have only bows and arrows years ago. And also, I want to say that I don't think lobbyists and NRA should run our country.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Doug Millar, and I really thank Congressman for calling this meeting. It's been long overdue. I met with you, as you know, 20 years ago in your office here in Santa Rosa as a state senator, and discussed these problems coming and also discuss solutions. So I'm going to address that tonight. U.S. News and World Report, January 24th, 1994, 1 month after Polly Klaas's body was found in our county, exposed the fact that the CIA is creating MK-Ultra mind control projects to create killers in our country. The bottom, no, it's all in the book, The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska. And I discussed that book with you in detail and asked for your help at that time. I've also gone to District Attorney Jill Ravitch, give her written information about this going on. And Sheriff, I've delivered it to your office, as you know. And the bottom line is that we have the solutions, because I'm a full-time investigator of violent crimes against children covered up by law enforcement for the last 20 years, because the FBI is covering up the CIA's creation of these killers and the use of these drugs. The book, The Franklin Cover-Up, tells you all about these drugs. And I'd like to introduce you, Congressman, to John DeCamp, that wrote the book, a CIA officer, exposing the fact the CIA is doing this. So thank you.
Thank you.
And here's some handouts for you.
Could we please have Mike Dunlap, Lucy Johns, James Tona, Jennifer Delaney, and Bernard Lefson, please.
Good evening. I'm Mike Dunlap. I'm a native Californian. I was born in Marin County. My first gun I took to school for show and tell. That was in San Anselmo. I lived in Olema, worked on a dairy ranch. Every kid learned how to deal with a firearm. They knew which end not to point at anything you didn't want to destroy. I'd like to ask a couple things. We want to talk about violence. We want to get the violence out of the use of guns. I currently live in Lake County. Last year, I was the range maintenance officer for Canocti Rod and Gun Club. Last year, we started a women's shoot program. We've had a bunch of women come out that have never touched a gun before, and it's been extraordinary to watch the change in these women because they've overcome fear of the weapon. The understanding is what... Are we listening to me or watching him?
Listening to you.
Okay. Sir, Mike, you put it on the table in your opening comments that everything's on the table. I want to hold you to that. I don't want this to be an everything's on the table the way the Republicans in Congress last year where everything's on the table. Don't define what the middle is and start from there. Let's talk about the whole table. We need to resolve the issue, absolutely.
Thank you.
Mr. Thompson, everyone else here, thank you for the chance to comment on this gun violence issue. My name is Lucy Johns. I am a constituent of House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi from San Francisco. We're not having a hearing in San Francisco. That's why I'm here. On December 14, shortly after hearing of the massacre in Connecticut, I posted a petition on the web called Ban Assault Weapons, All of Them, period. I am here to present you with nearly 5,000 signatures of people nationwide who have signed the petition. This petition is not done by an organization or a group. It's just me, a concerned citizen, and those who found this petition and share my view. Ban assault weapons, all of them, period. Many, many who signed made comments. I urge you to leaf through the comments. I'll just read a couple. From Bloomington, Minnesota, as a former Marine, I can guarantee you that very few, if any civilians need anything like assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. While mental illness might be a good scapegoat to fix the blame on these mounting tragedies, it is nothing more than a red herring. The real problem is the profits that these weapons generate. From Vermilion.
Thank you. I'll read the comments when.
Great. Thanks a lot.
My name is Jennifer Delaney. I found this bit of information off the John Birch Society. The Second Amendment was included in the Bill of Rights to ensure that the individual maintained his right to defend himself in all occasions. Without gun ownership, the citizen is totally dependent on the government for protection. What if your door is being kicked in and the police are 20 minutes away? Educate yourself on the responsibilities of self-defense and gun ownership and how you can protect the Second Amendment. This I came up by reading. In some countries like England and Australia, they have made it illegal for people to own a gun. So now all the criminals and the thugs, of course, get their guns on the black market, and the people, especially the senior citizens, can't protect themselves. They are sitting ducks. If you take away the right of we Americans to defend ourselves, we will be in serious trouble. And by the way, the school Obama's children go to have armed guards. I just thought you would like to know this. And they are also thinking about hiring some police with guns. Shame on President Obama for seeking more gun control and for trying to prevent the parents of other school children from doing what he is clearly doing for his own. His children sit under the protection guns afford, while the children of regular Americans are sacrificed. In 1929, the Soviet Union established gun control. From 1929 to 1953, about 20 million descendants unable to defend themselves were rounded up and exterminated.
Before you speak, sir, could we have Free, Mike Palmer, Larry Ringstorff, David Haynes, and Bob Smiley, please?
Thank you, Congressman Thompson. I'm a retired teacher, junior high, high school, junior college, university. Was a junior college adjunct counselor, high school counselor, 45 years. This sentence is foundational for all of us. The geniusness of Americanness is the marriage of individuality to responsibility. Responsibility means to respond to what? To what we think is good, naturally. Responsibility is an item that is not being well considered in America because there is not a communality in understanding, but divisiveness about what is good for us and for our citizenry. May there take place ample input in the citizenry, calmness, a caring, a compassion, that be good judgment upon the legislators and get other people out of the way so the legislators operate from their conscience and heart. Let us fall back on an ancient philosopher, Aristotle. And this I'll send to you by email, Congressman. It's a little deep. but it was spoken about 300 before Christ. And the best good is apparent only to the good person, for vice perverts us and produces false views about principles of actions. Evidently, then, we cannot be prudent without being good. There's more, but I'll have to let it go.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Free. Hanepe waste limielo mitakwesin. That's Lakota Sioux. My rights were just violated. I was told I couldn't talk to my public officials with my cane, that I need to walk by a gentleman over here. The Sonoma County Court is out of control. The courts in America are out of control. I've been before the panel of Board of Supervisors here and been told to shut up, and Shirley Zane, who was here, is completely out of control. It's my meeting. I mean, you should have seen it. It was horrible. I just have to say a lot in a short amount of time. I have a friend, Felicia Claudine Vasquez, in Sacramento, was shot in the back, 19 years old. She's a cripple. She's a paraplegic in a wheelchair. She carries a gun for safety, which is her right. The Second Amendment applies to everybody, and you have a right to carry guns, and I believe you should have a right to carry military-grade weapons around with you, and they're not weapons, they're tools, and everybody has a right to carry these things, and only a well-informed citizenry and a well-armed citizenry can thwart off the chains of tyrannical government. Anyway, Felicia, who carries a gun because she was shot in the back, and the person who shot her in the back is getting out of jail soon, and so she was carrying her gun, and she was in a car with a man she was with for a couple of months, and there was a fight in a parking lot, and she was in the car, and the guy said she had a gun, and we went and gathered evidence, video evidence, proof that she had no gun, and they railroaded her and put her in jail anyway. So this is what we have going on in our country. Out of control courts. If you go to army.mil and look up, there are on army.mil, there's a program for internment camps. You can join the Army and become a employee at one of the camps.
Don't forget your cane.
Herd Americans, yeah, right, thanks.
Thank you.
Nervous.
Good evening, I'm Mike Palmer. Congressman Thompson, I didn't vote for you, but I'm very much impressed. I'd love to have a beer with you sometime and just talk man to man. The Second Amendment does not give us the right to bear arms. The right to bear arms is endowed to us by our Creator. The Second Amendment prevents the government from attempting to violate our gun rights. 3 months ago, legally, I purchased an AR-15. I go to the range, I punch holes in paper 200 yards away, and my family's safer. I don't think there's a person in this room, if they were at a school watching somebody shoot children, wouldn't love to have my AR-15 in their hands and the skills to operate it. California shootings at an all-time low, gun ownership's at an all-time high. Coincidence? I don't think so. December 17th, there was a shooting in San Antonio. A man walked into a theater, started shooting. An armed citizen, a woman, stood up, shot him. There were no other deaths. When the police respond to a shooting, the average death toll is 14. When an armed citizen does, the average death toll is 2. The solution is to arm everybody who wants to be armed. Then we'll have a safer society. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Larry Ringstorff, an NRA member, active shooter, and Second Amendment advocate. And yes, I want to help fix this problem as much as you all here tonight. In doing so, I want to define the difference in semi-automatic firearms and assault weapons and assault rifles. Semi-automatic firearms fire one bullet round each time the trigger is pulled. The majority of our rifles and pistols legally owned and used by us today are semi-automatic firearms. They are not assault weapons, never were, never will be. Assault weapon refers to different types of firearms. It's a term that has differing meanings and usages. An assault weapon is most commonly defined as a firearm possessing certain features similar to those of military firearms. In more casual usage, the term assault weapon is sometimes confused with the term assault rifle. An assault rifle is a military rifle, generally is capable of full automatic fire, where multiple rounds are fired continuously when the trigger is pulled one time. We as gun rights and sport shooting persons consider the phrase assault weapon to be non-truth when used to describe civilian firearms, considering it a political-driven catchphrase. I'm not going to have time to read all this, so I'm going to give you copies of it. But we all need to stop calling the guns by the wrong names, making everyone think they are weapons of mass killings. 80 million legal gun owners today killed no one. We don't need more new laws. We need to enforce the ones we have. Laws only limit those of us who obey the law. Now,
Thank you.
Before the next speaker, could we have Carl Stewart, Ken Ipe, Jeff Bonjal, Barbara Vaughn, and Susan Moore, please?
Thank you. I'm Bob Smiley. This is about the Second Amendment. It's about whether it's going to be a robust amendment or just an empty clause. The issue here is about again, the definition of assault weapons. You and I were in the military during the Vietnam era. We both know what an assault rifle is and how that differs from today's AR-15. But my concern is that with the passage of the bill, what we're going to see is only cosmetic changes in the current AR-15. We're going to see that no plastic collapsible stocks are going to be allowed. We're going to see that there's no hand grips going to be allowed. We're going to see no muzzle compensator or barrel shrouds going to be allowed. How does the removal of a cosmetic effect on a rifle reduce its rounds, capacity to shoot, and the rounds that it has? Yes, high-capacity magazines may be reduced down to 10, but yet the Virginia Tech shooter only had 10-round magazines at that time. The issue of the registration is up, but the real prize is the redefining of automatic rifles or automatic weapons, both rifles and pistols, into that of a machine gun. And that reduces us as civilians to next to nothing as far as firepower goes.
Semi-automatics?
Semi-automatic. Yes, sir. Thank you.
I wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Carl Stewart, a former school administrator. In fact, Congressman Thompson, you visited Highlands campus in 2009. And I know that I'm speaking to a largely NRA audience, and yet I am a liberal Democrat. And I want to speak in favor of an updated assault weapons ban, including high-capacity magazine ban. I'd like to speak in favor of any gun purchase requiring a background check and a license and entered into a national database, including gun shows, which apparently have various loopholes. So I'm going to cut to the chase. That's it for me. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, my name is Ken Ide, and I have to say I'm so impressed tonight with all my fellow citizens and all of their support here. I am an NRA member. I am a gun owner. I personally, my definition of an assault weapon is any weapon that's pointed at me. I don't care if it's a single shot 22, okay? Dead is dead. I feel that we're going at this whole problem backwards. Okay, if you look at the statistics, they're out there. I'm going to mention a name tonight that hasn't been named as spoken. That's Dr. John Lott. He's done the most extensive gun study in this nation that's ever been done. He came out, and the title of his book is More Guns, Less Crime. When he started that study, he thought that he was going to prove that if we had less guns, there would be less crime. And that wasn't what he found. And I would strongly encourage you all to look at that and to review it. We have to have, all the citizens here, I think, I don't know, I should say, many feel that we're under attack. As private citizens, gun owners, we're law-abiding citizens, and we feel that you're going to take our guns away. What we need is to go lead by example. Florida, with their concealed carry permits, you look, their violent crimes have gone down dramatically. Our neighbor state to the north, Oregon, has done the same thing. We need that here in California. Let your citizens be educated in gun safety and let them be part of your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could we have please Marge Sorby, Charles Green, Scott Glover, Kenneth Boudreau, and Gary Lucas?
Call 5 more.
Walden Wong, Jennifer Delancey, Carlton Hinkle, Pam Fike, and John Matras.
Good evening. First, I'd just like to thank you, Congressman, and all your panel members here for taking the time to take the input from those of us just in the community on this very important topic. I'd like to start off and just tell you a little bit about my background. I'm not a native Californian. I've been out here for many years, but I'm originally born and raised in New Mexico. When I go back to New Mexico, I'm considered the tree hugger from California. When I'm in California, I'm considered the redneck with a ridiculous gun collection. So I kind of can see both sides of the situation. And what I'd like to just wish you luck on is finding that middle ground, because what this issue brings out is the extremes on both sides. I mean, we hear things from the, I hear friends of mine that are tree huggers telling me that we want to, outlaw semi-automatic guns because they don't understand the difference between semi-automatic and automatic. I hear my NRA friends, well, most of them actually don't even want to defend the putting firearms in all of the kindergartens because they understand the statistics and the long-term damage that could cause as well. But, when we talk about our rights, and I hear people talk about the Constitution and the rights that those, that we are supposedly going to completely always have, I think one thing we need to keep in mind is the Constitution and a lot of those things that our forefathers came up with were meant to be a living and breathing document to where it could be changed as society evolved. I'm not ever going to support, guns being outlawed completely, but I do think there are some limitations, and some of those limitations we have implemented in California that have been a success. Not necessarily all of them, but some of them have. I hear arguments such as the right to argue, the right to have a gun because you're a hunter. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
okay.
It goes quick, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, John Metras from Katati. In 2008, the U.S. had over 12,000 gun-related homicides, and Japan had 11. And in 2006, Japan had only 2 gun deaths in a population of over 128 million people. If we wish to get serious about this issue, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. The only guns that Japanese citizens can legally buy and use are shotguns and air rifles, and it's not easy to get those. First, you have to attend an all-day class, pass a written test. Then you have to take and pass a shooting range class, pass a mental test, drug test, which you file with the police. Finally, you need to pass a rigorous background check for any criminal record or association with any criminal or extreme group. You'll also need to provide police with documentation on the specific location of the gun in your home as well as the ammo, both of which must be locked and stored separately. Also, the police need to inspect the gun annually, and you'll need to retake the class and exam every 3 years. They take gun violence seriously. In one of Chris Rock's comedy sketches, he said that to end violence, we should charge $5,000 per bullet. He was being funny, but I think taxing bullets, and especially the high-capacity magazines, makes sense. We need to set our priorities. Which do you value more, human life or the right to own assault weapons? We don't have the right to own tanks, rocket launchers, and hand grenades, so why should we be allowed to own an assault rifle? This is a case where we need to have laws to prevent ourselves from our own recklessness.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shh. Thank you. What's wrong here is our judicial system. It's broken. And if no one can see that, you better open your eyes a little wider. People are not responsible. these people, we all understand something has to be wrong with these people to go shoot 20 innocent children. We understand that that's a mental health issue. But law-abiding citizens are not the problem. What's the problem is, as many people have said, we have too many laws. No one understands them. Enforce the laws we have. Stop doing some of this stuff that people can say, oh, well, gee, you know, I had a rough childhood. Let's put them in places that nothing happens to them. They're not held responsible. If you enforce the laws that are currently in place and make some of those stricter, maybe some of these people will think twice before they take a gun to another human being. If they can't respect human life, their own or anyone else's, there's a real problem there. And those are some of the issues. Those need to be taken care of. And I feel for all the officers that take their life in their hands every single day, and they have to go out and witness some of these horrific incidents. So those are some of the things that need to be taken care of.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Jeffrey Neal Zimmerman. I'm a family law attorney from Petaluma. This last year I had the unfortunate experience, some of you already know this, of a client of mine being shot before my eyes. Now, the person who held that gun carried only a revolver, and a small caliber one at that, and it only took 2 shots for his wife and himself. Still, I will remember until the day I die what I call the sociopathic stare that he gave me just before he expired. I see this largely as a mental health issue. I see this as something, when I watch the news about psychotic breaks, I see this as a problem with depression. It's out there, the resources are there. I think we don't need, however, just to make them more available, I think we need to have more active intervention. The other thought that I have is that I think we need to take another look at the video game decision on Brown. That one said that violent video games are protected by the First Amendment. I think we can find a way around that. We're smart enough to do that. So, and I think in terms of the high-capacity magazines, I'm running out of time, the high-capacity magazines, it's simply a due process issue. We can find a way to buy those back one way or another. Those are solutions that are within our grasp. They're doable. They will make a difference. Thank you for your time again this evening.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Robin Lamson. I want to thank the Congressman for this opportunity to speak. I guess one thing that's really concerned me since the untimely death of Oscar Grant was the public outpouring at the time regarding the death of this young man as a father and grandfather. I can't imagine losing someone like that. The part that also concerns me is the outpouring from the tragic events at Newtown, and yet we've forgotten about all the victims in between. And what I'd like to propose is that our historic president make use of his unique position in history and address the communities that are most affected by that, challenge them in his weekly radio address, maybe by reading the names of the victims that are killed every week, and challenge those communities to address the problem internally. Get the guns away from the young men, the brothers, the sons, the fathers. Do what he could do, which I believe he can, by pounding away at that, you know, rather than just trying to address the problems in areas where I'm not sure it's really going to help. Anyway, a lot of other comments I have, I think have already been said, so thank you very much for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Could we have, please, Brownack Brian, Kim Davis, Carol Gorenberg, Frank Bumgardner, and Teresa Hagman.
Does that mean I get 10 minutes?
No. That was good.
Hi, my name is Carol Gorenberg. I'm also a family law attorney here in Sonoma County. I am a former resident of San Francisco. I happened to move to San Francisco in January of 1979, which you may recall was right after Dianne Feinstein unexpectedly became mayor of that city. I moved out of San Francisco, as it turns out, 2 weeks after the shootings at 101 California Street. And it was a very horrible set of bookends to my 13 years living in San Francisco. And in the middle of that 13 years, I had the unhappy experience of having to bury my sister, who had shot herself with a gun that she legally purchased down on First Street in San Francisco. She had it legally. She had a background check. They said she was fine. Didn't matter that she had been hospitalized 6 months earlier for attempted suicide. The problem that we have here is that everybody is pointing the finger somewhere else in the system. The NRA people are saying guns don't kill people, people kill people. The mental health argument is, now that we're hearing so much about Newtown, we're hearing we have to get the mentally ill people out of the way. The problem is manyfold. We are a multidisciplinary society, and we have a multidisciplinary issue here. We have to regulate the products, like we regulate the lawnmowers and the cars and all the other dangerous things. We have to get the mental health issue.
Thank you.
We have, okay, thank you.
What did they say?
Tell me when to go.
Go.
All right. Thank you for holding this forum. Many people have already touched on a lot of important topics. I haven't heard anyone mention that there was a school shooting today in California, and it was with a 12-gauge shotgun apparently, so I hope that we won't be talking about banning those next, although I wouldn't be surprised. Now, the question is how to reduce gun violence. Someone earlier mentioned Feinstein getting death threats, and people that know me might be shocked, but why don't we look to Feinstein for suggestions on how to deal with this issue? What did she do in the 90s when she got death threats? She went out and got herself a concealed carry permit. So she recognizes the importance of the Second Amendment. Now, plain and simple, the fact is that it really doesn't matter if every single person in here came up and asked you to ban assault rifles, Second Amendment, whatever, because government officials only have one prerequisite to hold office, and that's to take an oath to the Constitution, which says the people have a right to bear arms, and that right shall not be infringed. Apparently, the government agents don't seem to understand what infringe means. You know what, I'm out of time, but the most disturbing part is you talk about it's not about banning the Second Amendment. Really? Because if I had a gun right now, I'm pretty sure I'd be charged with a crime. And with the latest ban of open carry of unloaded long guns, there's no way for Americans to exercise their Second Amendment anymore in California without converting it to a privilege through a permit process.
Thank you.
Could we have, please, Richard Kirk, Dorothea Logan, Bridget Manser, Liz Cozine, and Max Bridges and Dee Dee Bridges.
Would you call through a few more, Cheryl, so that gets them a line up there?
Okay. Anonymous.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having this seminar, or whatever you want to call it. I'm a retired police officer, 25 years. I'm a criminal investigator, and I've had lots of dealings with mentally disturbed individuals. One of the issues that I want to address is about the schools and what you can do to, since we're here for suggestions, and one of my suggestions is that each one of the school rooms, regardless of what level, have a hot button, and the teachers should be trained in order to determine as to whether or not that they actually need to hit that button, and that should be in conjunction with the police departments. I think that that would really alleviate a lot of problems, because if anybody came in or if they heard a disturbance, I also think that the teachers should have intensive training how to determine whether or not an individual is viably dangerous or, coming across in that way. I believe in Connecticut, what happened was the parent actually did attempt to talk to the counselor kind of, about her young son, and it wasn't very successful. And also the video games. The video games, I think, are very detrimental to our children, and I think that we should have some bills concerning that. And I guess that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Dick Kirk from Sonoma. I'm a pediatrician, psychiatrist, a dad, a gun owner, and a Vietnam non-combat vet. I deal with psychotic and suicidal people every day. Prohibition against alcohol didn't work in the 19th Amendment, and we figured out how to regulate the use and especially the abuse of alcohol. Prohibiting other substances doesn't work. The drug war causes more violence than it creates. Substance abuse contributes greatly to mental illness and to violence all over our country. By decriminalizing all the substances, providing much more funding for mental health to treat those small percentages of people that have problems with substances, we can eliminate a lot of violence. 96% of us in America use alcohol. Only about 10% are alcoholic, and about half the alcoholics then create problems and hurt other people in their alcoholism. 40% of Americans use pot. It's only about 10% of pot users that get screwy on it, and very few of them are ever violent. If we decriminalize all of that stuff, we'd save half our criminal justice budget. We'd eliminate the Cali cartels, the Mexican cartels, and the mafia. And it would be a common ground, Mike, that you and the legislature could agree on. Nobody from the NRA or the Greenpeace wants a drunk or a tweaker driving towards them.
Thank you.
I'll speak for Anonymous. I'm a citizen.
Anonymous is right behind you, so.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I didn't hear what you
There's
said.
two.
What'd you say?
Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Yeah. Real quickly, I voted for you. The time is now. I hope that you use what everybody said here to the best of your ability to pass something. Thank you for clarifying the Second Amendment earlier. There is not a tyrannical government trying to take away your guns. So people who think that need to take care. However, I do believe you should regulate armor-piercing bullets, ban silencers, take away, high magazines, and everybody disrespectful here needs to just be quiet and give everybody a chance to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before the next speaker, please, could we have John Spencer, Dwayne Bellinger, Elizabeth Cabrazier, Roy L., and Bonnie Merrill.
I have to apologize if I get pretty loud at times because my hearing is bad. I've survived three. I've survived 3 attempts of being blown up, so my hearing is not good. Okay, my identity is only known by 2 federal agents. I infiltrated an organization, spent 19 years. I've jeopardized my own family's lives and my own life in order to get detailed information on an organization that smuggles and human trafficking, guns, and drugs. You people can't stop the drugs, and alcohol couldn't be controlled with prohibition, and prohibition of guns isn't going to stop it either. Now, I've asked for the Ninth Circuit Court to rule California's law unconstitutional, which it is. I not only have 2 medical degrees, but I also have a degree in American history. And if you really understand the Constitution, you read it. I'll read it to you from out of law books and out of encyclopedias, so it's not my statement. It says here, the First Amendments to the Constitution contain the fundamental rights and freedoms of every citizen. Amendments 9 and 10 forbid Congress to adopt laws that would violate these rights. Now, the body of the Constitution could not be ratified until it got three-fourths
Thank you.
of the colonies to ratify it. 4 of those colonies said they would not unless they got a promise guaranteeing that they would be included with the body. Now, if you do away with the Second Amendment or alter it in any way, you have broken that contract.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I got one other statement I want to make.
You can turn it in and I'll read your
Classification of
information.
weapons is that Category 1 is covered by the Constitution. Category 1 is individual served weapons. That means any weapon that you can carry the spare parts, the weapon, and its ammunition.
Thank you.
Class 2
Thank you.
has
Thank you,
crew-served
sir.
weapons. They are not covered by the Constitution.
Thank
And
you, sir.
Class 3 are explosive devices. They're not covered either.
Thank you.
I find it deceitful when people don't.
Next
go by
speaker,
that.
please.
My name is Frank Baumgardner. I'm from Santa Rosa, and the main thing, and one of the things I wanted to point out is that nothing we can do today will bring back the lives that were lost at, Sandy Hook Elementary School, Newton, Connecticut. And I'm not against hunters. I think hunters, some of my best friends are hunters, and hopefully they haven't shot each other, yet. So that's fine, and then God bless them. But on December, it was my birthday, December 14th, 2012. But to my knowledge, there weren't any hunters out there that were trying to shoot, to bag a deer or a pheasant or a quail in Newton, Connecticut. You can go to Bushmaster online. Just look them up. I may be wrong on this exactly on the amount, but maybe it's 2,000, maybe it's 3,000. But you can buy one of these awful weapons, and of course, I'm not sure you can use it. I know California has good laws against that, but we had a national law from 1994 to 2004. And to my knowledge, it worked fairly well. It wasn't perfect. There were incidents. I'd just like to conclude by saying one idea I've seen put out there is that the National Guard might be trained. They know local schools. They know where they are. They can get there faster than the police can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again for bringing this. My name's Roy. I'm from Rohnert Park, and I would just like to say that America is at war, and it's not just in foreign countries. It's a mixed war of the government against the people. Because of the ignorance of the people, they have forgotten that they are sovereigns, and that, as has been said today, you are their servants. As such, if you pass these laws and they decide to bring out the rope and hang you from the nearest telephone pole, I think that would be just fine.
Great, thanks.
That's a tough act to follow. My name is John Spencer. I'm a peace officer in the state of California for 15 years. And my comments are going to be, I had a lot of stuff to say, but a lot of it's been said, is about personal protection and people being armed. And the debate now is whether or not 30-round magazines are going to be more dangerous than a 10-round magazine. What is an assault weapon? All guns are deadly. Like the guy said earlier, dangerous guns with one pointed at him. And like the police officer said earlier, he doesn't like the idea of his wife not being able to protect himself or herself when he's not around with what he's capable of having. And I think that goes for most law-abiding citizens in America. In California, 30-round magazines are not allowed for rifles, only 10s. But if you took all those law-abiding citizens and gave them all 30-round magazines, I don't think they would commit crimes with them. The crime rate wouldn't change. They wouldn't go out and shoot people. And so I think that if the issues are mental health, which they clearly are, because it's a behavior thing, it's not a weapon thing. You can take a law-abiding citizen and give them a belt-fed M249 machine gun. They're not going to go to a movie theater and shoot people with it. It's not the weapons. The issues are the mental health and the criminal elements. The law enforcement do the best they can with what they have to stop the criminal elements, but the budgets have been cut so much. Vallejo, San Bernardino, San Jose, Oakland, Stockton. If we took some of that money that we're spending building the police departments in Afghanistan and Iraq and put that back here at home, I think that would solve 99% of that problem.
Thank you.
Before you speak, please, could we have Robert Cormack, Bill Hageman, Edward Mendoza, Ernie Carpenter, and Mark Dupre?
My name is Dwayne Bellinger. I've watched over my lifetime, became one of the most aggressive, violent societies probably in human history, and I look at what on earth led to the American society becoming so aggressively violent. And there's a good news there, though. That is, the violence and aggression internally has decreased since 1990. That regardless of what the statistics, it seems in the newspaper, that there's actually been a decrease in our crime and our violence. And what caused that decrease in crime and violence? And what I found very interesting was an article in the most recent issue of Mother Jones that exactly correlates that decrease in violence with the fact that we outlawed, removed the lead tetraethyl from our gasoline starting about 1970. And that correlation goes across countries across the world, that as the countries eliminated lead tetraethyl, their violence rate has gone down. And I'd like us to check this out, especially Kennedy, I'd like to ask to check out for residual lead tetraethyl in our schools, especially those located next to our freeways and our transportation system. And I don't see any reason we can't start by testing the soils, replacing it with clean soils if it's needed. This should have been done decades ago. And whether some children are more susceptible to the lead and therefore are more likely to have a problem. For Congress, an aggressive Congress, I would like to see us check whether or not we have, and I'm not talking personally, whether or not we still have the lead pipes in our Congress from the last century.
Thank you.
Could we please have Bill Harris, Fern Cozine, Daniel Degree, Dan Bowen, and Kyle Keel?
Well, I see Ernie Carpenter. I know you called him, so.
I did.
Say those again. There are too many people talking.
Yes, Bill Harris, Fern Cozine, Daniel Degree, Dan Bowen,
Signs.
Kyle Keel.
No signs. No signs. Oh. Because you want to stay here.
Thank you, Congressman. I'd like to also add my applause to you having this hearing and to say welcome home to you and all veterans. I'm here tonight as the Ernie Carpenter, first Vice President of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and I'm putting into the record the national resolution on this issue for your perusal. Just a couple of points. Homicide, and this is in the resolution, from the NAACP, is the second leading cause of death among all 15 to 24-year-olds and the primary death among African Americans of that age group. In the last 50 years, more Americans have been killed by guns in their own country than all United States military personnel killed in all United States wars in the same time period in the entire world. That's a perspective. African Americans and Latinos are being murdered and harmed by gun use at significantly higher rates than the rest of our society. While African Americans compose 12% of the population, they are approximately 27% of all gun-related deaths in the country. We can't go into all those reasons, but it should be noted that no other developed country allows the ease of access to guns possible in the United States. The NAACP has adopted the following two policies that I will read to you. We support.
Why don't you give them to me, Ernie? So
Okay.
And I'll read them.
Oh, is my time up?
You know the drill.
Glad you're here. In a minute and a half to solve social problem. It's a challenge.
I know.
Thank you.
Thank you. But leave the paper. Leave the. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, sir. I'm Mr. Dupre. Can you tell me why this administration staged Fast and Furious to blame the Second Amendment? Can you tell me why the federal government last year spent bought 1.6 billion rounds of hollow point ammunition? Can you tell me why this government is buying hundreds of armored pillboxes to be used on the roads, you know, random checkpoints and stuff. Can you tell me why? I just got a sneaking suspicion, feeling, me and my neighbors, that this government is like planning to wage war against the citizens. Do you get that feeling, sir? I do, right. I looked at your voting record, sir. It seems like you're kind of voting, it's like you're being controlled by a foreign operation or something. You're voting for like someone other than the American people here. Yeah. So. So why is the federal government preparing like this? Is there something really bad going to happen? You're not going to answer?
Yeah, I don't know what to say to your questions. I can tell you why the government buys bullets. They have a reason to have the bullet. We have police forces.
But the hollow point is against the Geneva Convention to use on the battlefield, sir.
May I finish?
Right?
We have...
We're not using it for target practice because they're hollow points.
Thank you.
Nobody uses hollow points for target practice.
Thank you. Time's
Okay.
up.
Well, we're aware. We're awake.
I'm Mark Dupre. I don't know. He might be related. I don't know. I hear a lot of fear in the room. Fear is just really, really strong. But I'd like to talk about compassion. The bravery it takes to be compassionate. There's a letter that was written by a young man who said he understood what Adam Lanza did because he felt like he could have done the same thing. He says, "We don't take our rage out on you because we hate you or because you're bad parents or even because we're evil. We take it out on you because we know you're a captive audience, and often you're the only audience we have. When I attacked my mother, got angry at her, it had little to do with her and much more to do with the feelings of rejection and helplessness and crazy and isolation that have been percolating in my mind. It's the isolation that drove me to think that my solution was to take others' lives. I am the father of 2 children who were severely neglected before we adopted them, and I've had to spend a tremendous amount of energy to try to create a sense of safety for them. And it's taken everything I know to do that. It's taken compassion."
Thank you. Cheryl, how many more people want to speak? I'll stay long enough if it's okay with the county to hear everybody speak if we go to a minute. Is that all right? And I know, Sheriff, you have to leave, so you yeah, but you can.
Thank you.
Pull the mic down, if you would, please.
Thank you, Congressman Thompson. I don't really have anything prepared, but I did want to speak up because there are so many people who are so pro-gun here, and I think that most people are really looking for solutions. You have a forum called Prevention, and I'm not hearing a lot of good ideas or long-term solutions. We have 30,000 gun deaths in our country. Other countries have 10. Let's figure out what the difference is, and let's do it, because killing people is horrible. There's a lot of bad talking about government workers. Government workers were the teachers who protected other students, were the firefighters that went to put out a fire, and they were killed by somebody with too many guns. At this point, I think that we just need to look inside in our society and understand all the stresses we have, why there's so much violence, and just keep the dialogue going. It may not be a 1-year solution, it may be a 50-year solution, but we have to make progress.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Kyle Keel. I am a student of Santa Rosa Junior College, and I am in a training program to become a peace officer. I think it is unreasonable to ask law-abiding citizens to give up a right that they've grown up with and follow for their entire lives and that the United States has cherished for the last 237 years. What we need is more training for school personnel, not just teachers, but everyone who works in schools to know how to react to active shooters, and we need more training for local police agencies to quickly respond and know how to know the layout of their local schools. What I think needs to be done is emphasize personal responsibility. We cannot give people who are mentally ill, drug users, or convicted criminals access to firearms. All gun owners, including myself, need to take that responsibility.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Edward Mendoza. I'm a resident of Santa Rosa, and I would like to express my support for requiring criminal background checks for all gun sales, including private sales. I would like to see a ban of all assault weapons, including high-capacity magazines, and I would like to make gun trafficking a federal crime. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congressman, Forum team, thank you for coming to talk with us. I'm Bill Harris. I live over in Napa and just retired from 46 years of active military and contract service to other government agencies. I'm going to be quick. I've done briefings like this before. I'm going to go issue and solution. Issue: a large number of mass and serial killers do not kill for the thrill of shooting guns. The guns are only the means to the true end of the killers, inflicting the same kind of pain that was inflicted on them. Current estimates are that there are 15 million sociopaths, 3 million psychopaths, and unknown millions of psychotically ill people, all untreated, living among us. And those numbers do not include those incarcerated in prisons or mental hospitals. Solution: increase awareness and detection of mental illness cues to people across the country. A very high percentage of mass murderers.
Thank you. If you have a paper, though, if you would leave it,
I do, sir.
I will read it. Thank you.
Congressman and panel, my name is Dan Bowen. I'm visiting you from Healdsburg. Thank you for hosting this. I appreciate it. I'm a 15-year veteran with the U.S. Air Force International Guard. Left that in 2004, and I was the entire time carried a top secret SCI security clearance, was trained on numerous weapons, and I would argue that I'm as well trained, if not better, than some of the officers that are out on the streets to protect us. I'm the very guy you want to own guns and help in a bad situation. But in this state, I'm incredibly restricted from doing so. And in fact, many of my representatives are demonizing me because I want to own the very weapons that these police officers use to defend themselves from the criminal threat that exists in this state. And I can't do it in my own home. I was happy to hear a police officer earlier, I was out in the hall, but a police officer actually mentioned that exact issue, that the weapons they use to defend themselves while on duty, we can't have at home. And we can't do that, have the very same defense that they have while they're out there protecting us. And I think that's a really bad issue that you guys need to address. Quit demonizing us for protecting ourselves.
Thank you.
Could we please have, before you speak, Griff Dix, Walter Hansen, Paul Romsberg, Barney Dupre, Nathan Russell?
Thank you, Congressman Thompson, for taking the time this evening to listen to all of us speak what's on our minds and in our hearts. My name's Elizabeth Cabraser. I've lived here in the county for 35 years. I was at work in San Francisco, around the corner from 101 California, on the day when my friends and colleagues were needlessly murdered. Ever since then, I've worked on the board of the Law Center to prevent gun violence, not to ban guns, but to reduce gun violence. We do need a background check with all gun sales. We need a ban on military-style assault weapons, and we need a ban on large-capacity ammunition magazines. That won't solve our problems And we need something very much more, and that's something that listening to everyone in this room and outside this evening has taught me. We need all of our freedoms and rights under our Constitution protected and defended. I do not believe that putting our children in daily armed lockdown at schools is the way to protect their freedoms and the way to teach them freedom. There are a lot of problems we need to solve and a lot of things we need to do, and sensible gun laws will help us do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, gentlemen. Ma'am, my name is Nathan Russell. I'm a firearms instructor. I've had the privilege and the honor to train more than 4,000 people in the last 2.5 years with weapons. I have come across individuals that come to see me that were terrified of guns and were against guns. By the time that they were trained to a level to meet or exceed law enforcement, both federal and local, their opinions have all changed. They've realized that guns are a tool, and that tool is in place to protect ourselves from not only our government in the event that something like that happens, but also in the event of a natural disaster such as Katrina. When people are looting the streets, you have to have the ability to protect your home. I don't want a deer rifle to protect my home and my family. I want a weapon that was designed to kill people in order to protect myself from crazed people. Additionally, in the last century, there were more than 59 million people that were rounded up and massacred within just a few years of their governments disarming them. We need to be careful of that, we need to be aware of it, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen here.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Could we have, please, Curtis Schalick, Sandra Shand, Sean Martin, David Adams, Peter Mankus, Carol Greenberg, and John Jenkel.
Hi, I'm Walter Hansen. I just have a couple notes I scratched here tonight. I'm tired of people who don't know anything about guns writing gun laws. This has been something that I've seen time and time again. It's all emotion. It has nothing to do with logic. Banks, politicians, celebrities, all of you folks have armed guards. Our school children do not. Now, I don't think that we need to have guards in schools necessarily, but I think that allowing the teachers and staff to have concealed carry permits and use them and be trained is a very good idea. Let's see. Sorry. I think the litmus test for any laws proposed would be, would they affect what we're concerned about? We have to look at that. England chopped off their guns.
Thank you.
And they have 3 times more violent crime.
Thank you.
My name is Peter Mankus. I'm a local attorney. I'm a former criminal prosecutor. I'm here to try to function as a peacemaker in a compassionate manner to save lives. I'm going to draw a distinction between a prediction, a warning, and a threat. What I'm going to say next is intended to be a compassionate promotion of peace and a friendly form of fair warning. The gun grabbers are moving the nation closer, literally, to civil war. That's not a threat, that's a prediction. I know I'm being recorded. Many will think I'm crazy. I've thought about this for 15, 20 years. I've read every major federal and state discussion of the Second Amendment.
Thank you.
I'm willing to fight. For the sheriff.
Thank you.
No, for the sheriff, one thing, Sheriff. One thing that would simplify the enforcement of Second Amendment laws is take shall not be infringed seriously. That makes all prior restraint unconstitutional.
Thank you. Let's give everyone time to talk, please.
My name is Sean Martin. I just retired after 37 years of teaching in Sonoma and junior and senior high school.
You can pull that microphone.
Okay. Dr. Kirk took some of my points I was going to make about the lack of success of prohibition from me. But I want to point out that there are 71,000 gun control laws, federal and state, and all the people have been talking about background checks. They're largely state by state, and they're not funded. There's no money for them. Gifford's in Arizona, New Mexico, where she was in the, that individual would not have had a gun, but no one would put him in the system. He came through clean because nobody had money to pay somebody to put it into a computer. Pennsylvania has only 16 people in their system. Maryland has 1. You can't convince me that there's only 1 person in Maryland that's too crazy to have a gun. All these laws only work if they're funded. And with us in $16 billion of debt, that's going to be a hard thing to do. But confiscating guns or confiscating assault weapons, there's millions of them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also a teacher. I think there's a great deal of genuine fear in this room, and I hope that we can help our neighbors to find a sense of real safety in something besides automatic weapons, assault weapons that are a threat to peace in our communities and ignore the root causes of crime. I hear a lot about personal responsibility, but what's really being said is trust no one but ourselves and our personal assault weapons, every man for himself. And that's not a community. That can't raise our children to be healthy. That's an insane asylum. I applaud Feinstein's courageous bill standing against the gun lobby. The NRA makes money off of keeping you fearful and buying guns. We have too many guns and too little compassion for one another. As Martin Luther King, to paraphrase, we will either learn to live together as brothers or die together as fools. Thank you.
Thank you.
George Flynn, Chris Carter, Andrew Pillett, Mary Kyle Logar, Clancy Faria, Bradley Quince.
Hello, neighbor. I'm John Jankel, and I'm here to talk about the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment says Congress may not deprive persons of life, liberty, and property without due process of law. What's an undeclared war? That lacks due process of law. We the people have suffered from 77 unconstitutional wars of congressional choice against CIA fabricated enemies for fascist gain since World War II, the last lawful war. 66 years. And as a result of that, we have squandered our resources and killed our earth neighbors, made us ourselves the most heinous people on earth. Congressman, you did not vote against Martial Law 107243. Thank you very much. It authorized the President of the United States to use the armed forces of the United States as he determines to be necessary. I have it right here.
Thank you.
That gives the President the right to use guns as at will, sir. Needs to be stopped. Thank you.
Good evening, Congressman, Board. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. My name's Clancy Faria, and a retired law enforcement and critical incident negotiator for quite a few years. And I have a lot of opinions on this issue, but what I really came to talk to you tonight was about a group of people that are working in our schools, not in the classified section, but as staff and volunteers in after-school programs throughout the state. We are providing training and issues for staff, but we have about 450,000 kids per day in after-school programs with about 22,000 staff that are not being given the training or the ability to respond to or help respond to these incidents should they occur after school hours on school property. There's some fear out with these folks, and I don't really think it's being looked at, and I was asked if I would bring that forward tonight when they heard I was going to be here, so that's what I'm doing. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
My name is George Flynn. Thank you all for hosting this. There is a right to bear arms, and there are responsible gun owners. However, it seems to me that people, in addressing a secure state, their own security, they're skipping over the well-regulated militia. And that's government. It's regulation. And that is part of the Second Amendment. And we might, I don't know, I'm not a big military person, but you might look to the military as to what regulation might be. And the NRA admits to training, and that's wonderful. I mean, that's good, a lot of training. And we know that it also very much includes supervision. So can we admit to some supervision also? And personal responsibility. You're responsible in the military, both to supervision and the law.
Thank you. And more? That's it? Great. Well, thank you all for coming. Thanks to you. Pardon me? Let's go. We've got 5 minutes left.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Taveras, and everyone that has articulated the right for the Second Amendment, I don't need to repeat. I concur with all of them. But what I'm all concerned about, and I haven't heard it discussed tonight, is the fact that Sonoma County and other supervisors and legislators have signed on to ICLEI, which is an arm of the United Nations. The United Nations clearly is taking away our gun rights. And I see a frown on your face, and you were set to tear down guns in dams in Siskiyou County to take away private property rights. Most importantly, I'm concerned about this NASA document that is from NASA. And it cites the CIA, the FBI, the Southern Command, Atlantic Command, etc. And it says on page 93, exploit CNN syndrome, seek carriers via swarm attacks, capture, torture Americans in living color on prime time, terror attacks within the continental United States using binary biologicals, take down critical infrastructure, EMP, and radiation against our brains. So what are you doing about that?
Thank you.
Wow. My name is Elaine Holtz. I know many of you sitting up here. I'm very proud to be a 35-year resident of Sonoma County. And you know, in listening to everybody, it's the fear everybody has. It sounds like they're afraid our government's going to attack us. I think the biggest problem we have is the fact that we are a violent society. What did we do in 9/11? We went and bombed and destroyed a country that was innocent. What did our children see? How do we solve problems? The second thing is with these guns, you know, education, regulations, none of that is going to help it until we start addressing the main issue, and that's the violence that our children are exposed to every single day, from cartoons on up. What do we say? You got, what's his name, Ayo Kayato or something, and he's shooting a gun when he's chasing some cat. I mean, we have to look at what's happening with our media. And the last thing I want to say is that, Mr. Thompson, I really appreciate you being here, but please, there's two things I would suggest. Number one, the FCC. Stop taking away our airways so we can educate our children. And the second thing, please watch Robert McNamara's Fog of War and study it and have classes and find a way that we can have peace on earth. When we have peace on earth, we'll have peace in each one of our communities. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bryce Lamont. I've lived here my whole life. One thing I would like to see is, you can correct me if it's not already been done, but I would like to see more avenues for psychologists to have a way of appealing to judges or perhaps a board for someone who they think might be a danger to someone without perhaps saying their name and explaining the situation so that you don't violate their personal privacy. And if they are considered to be dangerous, to then go and check to see if they do have guns on records and things like that. And then if perhaps they've been wrong, they would have an appeal process. I would like to see this. I think it's important to give them more avenues. Considering that there's been a lot of talk about how extensive our background checks are, I would like to see maybe a little bit of trust in the public and passing legislation that will allow a shall issue for conceal and carry permits of people who can prove that they are worthy, and that shouldn't involve, you know, very specific things or perhaps one person deciding. It should be set off of criteria. And if you want training to be mandatory for that, I suggest you make it cheap or very affordable, because this idea of making owning guns very expensive is an affront to poor people having the right to defend themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeff Furlong. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm just a gun owner that doesn't want to lose his gun rights, but most everything I heard is open to argument. It's just difference of opinions, but it cannot be argued that if you set a gun there and nobody touches it, it doesn't do anybody any harm. It's not the guns, it's the people that use them. So regulate the people, not the guns.
Thank you.
My name is Curtis Shavlik. I am 21 years old and I have lived in Napa, California all my life. I am a gun owner and I aspire to become a police officer. The first thing we always do as humans is to seek to cast blame for our own wrongdoings. There is nothing that could have prevented the tragedy that has brought us here today, because so long as there is free will, people will make bad choices. Contrary to popular belief, we are not here to end gun violence, because it is gun violence used by police, citizens, and the military alike that keep us safer in this country. What we are truly here for is to end the killing of the innocent. That is the true nature of our cause, and everyone who is here is right for doing so. You want to find a solution, then simply ask yourself not what others can do for you, but what you can do for others. If you are a gun owner, train to use your weapons in the defense of yourself and others. If you don't own a gun or don't even like them, support someone who does, because regardless of your opinion, they are the people that would give their life to stand between you and evil. That is why I'm a gun owner and why I wish to become a police officer, because I seek to protect others where they cannot protect themselves. We should be thanking those who use gun violence every day to make sure that we can stand here and make fools of ourselves while they die to defend our freedom. Greater love has no one than he who laid down his life for his friends.
You. Thank you very much. You're the last one. You got a minute.
Hi, my name is Megan Coffey, and I am short. My name is Megan Coffey. I live in Roanoke Park, and I didn't get here until 7, so maybe somebody already said what I have to say, but I believe that we should tackle this problem in small measures, small increments. Start with what everyone can hopefully agree on, like closing the quote-unquote gun show loophole, and people who are on the terrorist watch list, having them not be allowed to purchase guns. That seems like most people could agree on that. So maybe if we start with those things where we have common ground, get those passed, that builds a sort of foundation. Just like with healthcare, we can't get to where everyone's covered until we start with the small measures. So please do what you can, and thank you for representing us.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody very much for being here. I appreciate you coming out and sharing, those who shared suggestions on how we could fix this. I appreciate that very much. Everything that I've heard tonight, last night and the night before, I will certainly fold into the mix. I've been holding hearings throughout Washington with all of the experts from all of the aforementioned organizations and communities of interest, mental health, law enforcement, education, and been doing the same in the district. And all of that is going to be taken into consideration before my task force makes any recommendations. I just want to clarify one thing that was said twice tonight, and that was that they're beating up on mental health, and I don't think that's the case. Everyone recognizes that a huge part of this is mental health related, And it's not beaten up, there's no question about it. Mental health has not been funded appropriately for quite some time. And the problems keep getting more and they keep getting bigger. So we have to really make a commitment to that. And the mental health component of what we're doing is going to be an important part of that. So thank you all very much for coming. Panel, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it very, very much. Yellers.
There were no mass shootings in America until the CIA was created. 19 years later they started. Do your homework.
Oh, good. Okay.
And we'll
You
get
heard
back
it.
to
You heard it today.
Yeah, I heard it.
Yeah.
We looked at it, and I'm going to get associated.
You want to go that way.
Jackets back there. I'd like to know what it is. They're getting
Badge hanging from the wall inside of that one.